Welcome back into the Star Wipe Lounge, where this week we are going to be discussing kind of a serious topic, at least serious in terms of the entertainment industry. Like, obviously, no one's dying, but it's
serious in terms of our podcast.
Yes, it is serious enough. And this week, it's not just going to be myself and Owen, as usual. It's going to be, instead, myself and Owen and a friend of ours. It's Diane Thao is joining us here in the lounge.
Hey everybody. So
Yay.
Just a little background. I know you can't see me right now, but I am a petite Asian American. So
I feel like if the last name didn't tip off that you're not white.
you never know. So just to give people more context onto why I'm joining on to this podcast.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, obviously that should make it pretty apparent then what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about inclusivity in entertainment, as it were. So the casting of basically non-white, non-male actors in lead roles or in,
yeah, because
just major roles.
As we like to say on this podcast a lot, we are the whitest of white boys from rural Oregon. So we thought it'd be best to bring in someone else to talk about this.
Here's the thing. I feel like we are fairly woke individuals, as the kids would say, and I feel like Diane would agree.
As the kids are saying,
I would say most of the time, yeah.
Most of the time, but we still have a much different viewpoint on these things than someone who, obviously has lived as a non-white, non-male.
This is so much
individual.
pressure, though, you guys. Now that I think about it, like I have.
You're the voice for literally every minority.
Yes, for almost every minority, being female, Asian. All that.
The only thing you are not hitting is you're not hitting that LGBT
Yep, I was about
demographic.
to say LGBTQIA, I believe.
Well,
he keeps adding.
Yeah.
I feel like LGBT representation is an entirely different episode that we will touch on a little bit later, because that's like its own can of worms.
Yeah.
Okay.
So more or less today we're talking about sex and race. So I feel like we actually had quite the discussion about this, Owen, a couple episodes back. We were talking about Disney remakes.
Yes.
And we wound up going off on I went off on how they shouldn't remake Pocahontas because it would be extremely problematic.
Yeah. We talked about Pocahontas specifically, and we also brought up the actual Terrence Malick live action Pocahontas sort of story, the New World.
Yeah.
And how that movie tried to do it in a more realistic way, and it's fucked up.
Yeah.
Rightly so.
I mean, it was a horrible point in history.
Yeah.
But so that kind of spurred on this whole discussion about Disney specifically having their casts played by, people of the correct ethnicity, as it were. So Aladdin is one that I know that you and I, Diane, have talked about specifically.
And we share very different viewpoints on Aladdin.
I feel like, okay, we share different viewpoints on the film itself, but I feel like this specific issue in regards to Aladdin, we agree on.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to watch Aladdin, because growing up, you don't see that many melanin people.
That's an interesting way to put that.
I mean, it's true. And that's something that you realize very soon when you go into grade school and like you're getting called names and you're like, wait, what am I? And that's when you start to realize that you're not white. And I still remember to this day, like being on the playground and some kid called me Chinese. And at the time I didn't know I was Chinese because my parents are from Thailand. And based on 23andMe, I'm 90% Chinese. So quite newly discovered. but still, it was the first time a kid ever told me that he was like, oh, what are you doing, Chinese? And I was like, that's not my name. My name is Diane. I will always remember that. And I was just like, oh, am I different? And then that's the first time you start to see color, because I guess that's the first time that's like kids distinguish and put everything in boxes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Aladdin came out right when I was in kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, so the cartoon version. And so I always thought that was really cool. Seeing Jasmine, she was more feistier than other princesses. Like you can tell that she had a motive. Like there was a purpose for her character building. And I do like that, especially since most Asian cultures are male dominant.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to watch the remake just because the casting. If it was a whitewash cast, I definitely would not have gone to support it. But because, Mina Masu was kind of an unknown actor, and
wasn't he like a male model or something?
No, I don't.
Or no, it was the guy who played Jafar was the male model.
Probably, but I heard that
Interesting choice for the villain.
I'm pretty sure. I think I remember when he was cast, people being like, "Why did you cast an underwear model?"
I don't know if that's true because I know that he's done a lot of films and like a lot of cameos. But Mina Masood was in that Jack Ryan show.
The one with
Amazon, and he played.
Krasinski?
Yeah, he played a small character on that, but he was very much like still climbing through the ranks, and then this was his breaking moment. And because he has that Egyptian background, and Aladdin is kind of a mix of some Indians really gravitate towards Aladdin because they think that Aladdin could be Indian, and then
it's very
Arabs
much this
think,
this sort of pseudo Southern Asian Middle Eastern.
Apparently, he was Chinese Muslim, you guys. I know, but yeah. So I like that. And Naomi Scott, she's half British and half Indian. Her mom's Indian, so I was like, okay, they cast pretty well. And then seeing how, if you watch the whole film, there's only maybe less than 3 minutes of a white person in there.
Why was there a white person in it at all?
It was a prince. He was coming to.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It was kind of like watching The Farewell. The only white characters it wasn't even a white character. They're all extras.
Yeah.
You see them in one shot at a birthday party, and there's some white people, and that's the only white people in the movie.
Yeah, definitely couldn't get an extra in Aladdin that was white. That would make sense.
Yeah. No, but yeah, Disney seems to really be spearheading this trend of casting.
And I like that they're actually putting money behind the marketing behind this, because they could have just said, oh, here, we're making a remake and we'll see how it goes. But they did surpass that $1 billion mark. And so they're making a sequel. And I was like, yes, because I need more of Naomi Scott and Mina Masood, because their chemistry is amazing, and I live for it. I do.
Well, here's the thing about the original Aladdin. I was just quickly looking it up. The characters themselves are non-white, but they're all voiced by white people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was fairly common back in the days of Disney animation. I think Mulan had a pretty large Asian cast.
It did,
but even then, it had you had your Eddie Murphy, who obviously is not white, but is not of the correct region of the world.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how to phrase things.
I'm pretty sure they had a Asian American actor play Shang, the speaking part, and then they had Donny Osmond do the singing parts.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the voice of Jasmine, she was white, but the singing voice, she was Filipina.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And she's done a few Disney songs. I'm almost positive that Leah also did Mulan's Reflection. So that was interesting because she was one of the very few Asian Americans in Broadway at the time. And she definitely kind of helped break some glass ceilings through that. But I mean, Hollywood's moving into an interesting direction now because they're starting to see that people do want different stories, different perspective, and there's money behind it because it is a business at the end of the day. And now that they're starting to see that we're getting more content like Black Panther.
I was about to say, you look at the push behind Black Panther. Black Panther, a huge part of its success was largely the social media, call to action, as it were, to get people to go out and see this movie.
Even though, did Disney fully trust Black Panther to do as well as it did, seeing as how they released it in February?
See, I feel like the February release, you could spin it one of two ways. You could definitely spin it the way that you think.
Because the Marvel movies don't usually release in that window.
Well, I mean, and like we've talked about it quite a few times, that the industry practice has put questionable films at the beginning of the year. January, February, early March tends to be the films that people don't trust. But that movie, you also got to remember, that movie was also released during Black History Month. Also
True.
had a large part of it. So I feel like Disney didn't not have faith in it, but I don't think that they expected it to be
One of their most successful Marvel films to date.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the money behind it, their huge budget, to me was showing that this was them giving Ryan Coogler a chance.
Yeah.
Especially since he's done pretty well with, Fruitvale Station and the Creed films, and, him having that relationship with Michael B. Jordan already. I like Black Panther just because it gave us a whole new element that we've never seen before in Marvel superheroes.
Yeah. You get this like much different worldview, viewing things from the lens of Wakanda versus your.
But do you guys remember
viewpoint.
the like semi controversies around that movie? Because people there are people just reacted negatively to it just off the get go because they feel like Disney is pandering.
Yeah, there were the people who were making the argument that it was Disney pandering, and there were also people who were making the argument that it was Disney putting politics in places where it doesn't belong and like things of that nature. I don't see a lot of base.
I mean, I don't either.
Like,
I don't think it's a legitimate controversy, but it was brought up a lot.
Yeah, and it certainly was. So Diane, as somebody who, I mean, like Black Panther probably didn't affect you the same way that it affected some people, but
I still liked it because seeing the whole cast and seeing that there were powerful women.
That is true.
That was awesome. Like warriors.
Yeah, the majority of the cast were female. Like obviously Black Panther and then Frodo, but then the rest of the heroes were all female.
Yeah, but I mean, seeing that a lot of them, his bodyguards were females, you're like, that's pretty cool. And then there's always been this whole cultural thing of African Americans and Africans and how there's been a disconnect this whole time. And like being able to see that on the big screen, like of course, Oakland and who knows where Wakanda is, but
somewhere
central,
somewhere near the Congo-ish is where it's fictionally placed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but seeing how there's obviously that rivalry and, Michael B. Jordan's character he felt like Wakanda, the country, had abandoned those who lived in America. Mm-hmm. There is that discussion, and I have friends who talk about that where, if they come from Africa, they feel like people from Africa kind of judge them and vice versa. But it's like...
That's interesting. That's something I had actually never thought about.
And so that was very interesting to see play out on the big screen. And not only the female aspect of Lupita Nyong'o doing like a fantastic job, but seeing that she herself was a protagonist who didn't need Chadwick's character to like define who she was. That was really cool. Like, he's the king. She could easily just be like, hey, I'm gonna cater to you, and then his little sister was so cool. Like
Letitia Wright is Shuri, and of course you can't forget Denai Guerrera. I think that's how you say her name.
Yeah. Everyone kept posting the gif of her like throwing her wig in the dude's face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because everyone thought it was cool that they actually let her be bald in the movie.
Oh yeah.
Which is not something that you see too often.
No.
But anyways, as someone who is not white, seeing more and more films where non-white characters are in the lead and non-male characters are in the lead.
Do you like that? Because I know that some people, it may like make them uncomfortable because they're so used to seeing whitewashed versions of everything, because it's just easier for them to connect.
It personally doesn't bother me. Like, if anything,
there's enough whiteness.
Yeah,
I don't need to see it everywhere.
If anything, I appreciate seeing more and more of it, because I feel like there's a lot of life experiences that many of us don't get to, obviously we don't get to experience it. I'll never know what it's like to be a black woman. Shocker, I know. But I'll never know what that's like. But I can watch, I can watch a movie about it and I can learn something about it. Or, to me, that is where the benefit of storytelling comes in, is experiencing something you'll never get to experience. So why does every lead character have to be a white male with brown hair? That's even more specific.
Yeah.
It's always a white male with brown hair.
Oh,
It's all the Nolan North characters in video games.
Yeah, basically. But how does it make you feel to see more and more of this?
I'm all for it. I mean, I'm starting to realize it more so now because, you know, with Netflix, they have older movies, and something that I liked growing up because there wasn't that much diversity was, of course, those John Hughes films. And like 16 Candles I thought was cool when I was 7 or 8.
Extremely problematic now.
Wow. Whoa, the dialogue. I mean, it just shows you that he was targeting a certain demographic, and it was like more so the middle class white.
15 to 25-year-old white women. I think was the target demographic of that
and like,
film.
there was even a dialogue where they're walking down the hall and the girls are talking, and then she was like trying to tell her something shocking happened or whatever. It's been a while, and her friend's like, oh, is it a black guy? And you're just like, whoa, where is this coming from? And then you have that the character Long Duck Dong,
who's just a massive Asian stereotype.
Yeah, and I didn't grow up in the 80s, so, but I've heard from multiple accounts that people who grew up in the 80s, especially Asian males, were, you know, teased because of that character. They got called that character or whatnot, and that typically happens. Like, growing up, people call me whatever Asian character they saw, or even like professionally, like people will call me, what is that reporter from Family Guy?
Trisha Takanawa.
Takanawa, yeah. So people would call me things that they associate with because there's just not enough Asian characters.
Yeah, I think I was actually on a shoot with you one time and someone called you Trisha Takanawa.
And I wanted to punch that guy in the face, but...
Well, I think that's a thing with older films, and with the diversity in older films is that there's usually one character that's supposed to represent
the token.
Yeah, and they wind up being a massive stereotype.
Yeah, and that was one of the more interesting things that, even though this isn't a film, I recently finished watching the final seasons of Orange is the New Black. And one of the interesting things about that show is that the entire cast, aside from maybe one guy who's a white male character throughout the entire series, the entire cast is basically minority women.
Yeah.
Which you just don't, especially when that show debuted, which I think was 2011 or 2012.
2011,
you just didn't see
like
that at all.
Yeah, no, that was definitely, it's definitely kind of just coming at the beginning of this wave of seeing more and more of the diverse stories from people.
And I think that it typically happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You're getting writers who are minorities who want these stories to be told. Because it's usually, that's how it starts, is like the ripple effect. It's not going to just be actors who are like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's been up front and center for, I don't know, the last 20 decades. But it's, I would say, you know, the last 3 years in Hollywood, the change has been more noticeable.
Been flipping over, yeah. I would say that the first time that I really noticed it starting to take a hold, I think, was probably The Force Awakens. When you look at the main cast of that film and you realize, oh, 2 of the 3 characters are minorities.
Well, and that was such a decided effort by Disney.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at some of their press tours and stuff, they make a point being like, this is a super diverse cast, and even the background extras are all different races and genders, and obviously Star Wars, you get to throw in aliens in there.
Yeah, so you get really diverse.
Yeah, because I want to say Oscar Isaac's character, he's Guatemalan. His character was originally only written for that one movie. Yeah,
he actually, in the original draft of the script, when the TIE fighter, when him and John Boyega are in a TIE fighter and they crash, he died.
Really?
So sad.
Yeah, but J.J. Abrams liked him so much that he was just like, you're coming back later in the film.
I'm glad that he liked him, because I also feel like audience members really gravitated towards his character.
Yeah.
He's probably my favorite. I love Ray, but he's probably my favorite.
There's a lot of people who are pushing for Poe to be gay. And it sounds like there's a lot of discussion at Lucasfilm with a lot of people going, okay, yeah, that'd be fine.
But I mean, is it something that they've already kind of sprinkled throughout the storyline, or is it just going to be a spin-off and we'll find out then? Or
as far as like, because they've been introducing, again, like LGBT, that's an entirely different episode, but we'll touch on it a little bit here. They have been sprinkling more and more characters of different sexual preferences throughout Star Wars since Disney took it over. Some of the books that have come out since have had gay characters or characters who are hinted at being gay. So it's something that, like, if Oscar Isaac came out and it was like, oh, Poe is gay, it wouldn't like be a shock to anyone really paying attention. It might be a big swing for his character, but I would argue that his character really hasn't had that much development anyways. So
yeah, that's true.
That's a different critique.
Yeah, that's an entirely different discussion. We've already talked about The Last Jedi on this episode or on this podcast.
But something that I really like that we haven't seen before is overseas. That's the question and conversation that a lot of these studios have with these actors. It's like, how well are you going to sell overseas? And Black Panther did push the needle in that front because Will Smith has heard it forever and ever where they're like, oh, we don't know how well this movie's going to like take off in Asia or whatever, because they may not want a black man on a poster, but it's like, what? Will Smith is loved everywhere, you know?
Well, I mean, and that comes down to another thing with the whole, with Mulan. Something that we discussed with the Mulan remake that's coming out, and some cynicism that you had about it, Owen, which is valid cynicism, is the idea that a lot of the changes that they're making to the Mulan remake is to benefit the Chinese audience.
Yeah.
Who are going to view it in a different way. And you could make the argument that the all Asian cast could also be a factor there.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's simultaneously for the money and simultaneously for the benefit of the story, I think.
And it's something we can get
behind.
Because
it's a $1 billion trillion national media conglomerate. They're going to do whatever they're going to think is going to make them the most money.
Yeah.
And so it's for me, it's difficult to pinpoint where the audience demand begins and where the money comes in. Like, did audiences demand it and that's why they changed, or did they just think we can make more money this way?
Got it.
I definitely feel like, just in terms of diversity in general, it's something that you pointed out that, you know, you have people behind the scenes definitely pushing for it, and that's definitely a huge factor. But it would not surprise me if a huge part of it is some executive somewhere realized, hey, diversity is selling, let's push it. And it's one of those times where it's like, it was a decision that was made in a boardroom, but it's something that I can get behind and be in full support of.
Just because if they make the decision, quote unquote, for the money, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Especially because it is going to be moving the needle in the direction that a lot of people definitely think that it should go.
Do you want to touch on the Mulan Hong Kong controversy really quickly?
Yeah, I was like, I think the movie's going to be controversial, especially what's the tension that's been going on with China and Hong Kong. Yeah. And a lot of the actors are speaking out about it in support of Hong Kong. And so the movie may not do so well in China.
Except for, didn't the lead speak out?
She was in support of the
She was
Chinese
in favor of
police,
mainland China, yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, it was a big thing. For those of you who are listening to this who might not have who might not be fully up on the news of the day, what is happening currently in Hong Kong is there are massive protests going on.
For weeks now, like a month.
Like 13 weeks.
Yeah, it's been
crazy
months at this point. And we aren't just talking like small couple hundred people protests. No, we're talking like
millions.
Yeah.
Like flooding the streets, shutting down like city infrastructure, big deal protests. And they're protesting about stuff that really the world should be paying attention to. The idea of mainland China forcing their will on this sort of semi-autonomous.
The crux of the issue was that they wanted to pass something that would allow them to extradite people from Hong Kong to mainland China.
Yeah.
For potential crimes, which, you know, China's moving more and more authoritarian with their government. So obviously Hong Kong did not like that.
Yeah.
The citizens of Hong Kong.
And so when members of the Mulan cast are speaking out in any way, it's going to cause waves.
Yeah.
I know that here in the West, the biggest issue that we're finding is the lead speaking out in support of the police. But as you pointed out, there are cast members who are speaking out in favor of Hong Kong, and that's going to affect business in China, which is right now, for those of you who don't know box office numbers, China is now officially the largest market in the world for movies.
Really?
They surpassed the United States. I'm pretty sure they either surpassed them or they're real close to surpassing them.
I wouldn't be surprised if they move the release date because it's getting so contentious.
When is the release date?
Sometime next year.
Sometime next year, yeah.
I think spring next year. Or something
It could be one of those things where they leave it and just wait for hopefully things to blow over, and then as they get closer, if it's still an issue, they'll move it. But it's
I've been gone in the desert for a week. I've been trying to catch up on the news. Basically, from what I've heard, it sounds like it's escalating.
Yeah.
Yeah, shit.
Sounds like there's more tear gas coming out. There's just
there's a lot of stories about like the cops drawing guns on people.
Yeah, it sounds
and,
really bad.
Like loaded, like not. They've been using beanbags and stuff for a while, but these are like
they're
loaded with
hosing people
regular
down
bullets.
with water now too. Yeah.
Yeah. But have you seen some of the videos of like the protesters and their like resourcefulness for dealing with shit?
No.
Like, okay, so tear gas. One of the best ways to stop tear gas is to douse the grenade in water. The problem is that once that gas is in the air, it's a problem. So there have been videos of protesters who like, there will be like a group of like 5 or 6 guys. Once a tear gas grenade gets thrown, they'll take a traffic cone, run over to it, cover the grenade, and then start pouring bottles of water through the opening of the cone. And then when they lift the cone, there's no more tear gas.
Oh, wow.
It's very cool.
Or they're like cutting down Face ID towers and stuff. It's getting crazy over there. But this isn't a news podcast.
No.
But just
since we're on this topic, and this is kind of like more of a pivot towards Southern Asia, but still Chinese, is Crazy Rich Asians, Singapore. There is this actual group in Singapore, just wealthy, rich people that it's just like stupid money, and they can be like using the restroom and using the dollars as tissue because they're so rich down there.
Damn.
And that movie, was a box office hit.
I still need to see that movie. I've heard nothing but good things about it.
John?
I know. You messaged me after every single one of the like 6 screenings you went to for that movie. I know.
I was just surprised at how good I liked it. And I mean, I think it was just being able to see the whole cast. Like the storyline itself, it's fine. Do I think it's Oscar worthy? No. But do I think it's important and something that we need culturally in Hollywood? Yes, definitely. But there was so much pressure for that movie to do well, which is sad because if that movie didn't do well, we probably wouldn't get, the movie Farewell or other movies following right after. Like, I want to say To All the Boys I Loved was released very quickly right after, but on Netflix. I'm sure it already had a release date, but still it's just like there was so much pressure for that movie to do well for Asian representation, which sucks because it's like that movie should also have the right to not do well, because there are plenty of movies that are casts full of white people that don't do well.
Yeah, there's no movie that is like the like standard bearer for white folks. Mm-hmm. Because that's like every movie. Yeah,
I was going to try to come up with a smart ass answer, but I didn't have one. I was going to say like Casablanca.
I know there was I think there was a similar pressure on Black Panther and like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel for like these movies have to do well or else we're just not going to get them again because there's not a market for it.
There was definitely a lot of discussion about that around Wonder Woman. I remember
being a female director,
female lead, about a female character. I remember there being a lot of people being like, this movie bombs. You're never going to see a Wonder Woman movie again. Like, you're just not going to.
But how many Spider-Man movies have we gotten?
Oh my God.
And how many bad Spider-Man movies have we gotten?
And based on the limbo that shit's in, are we going to get another new Spider-Man? Maybe.
Soon,
it makes money. Far From Home is now the single highest earning film that Sony has ever had. So yes. We will
soon,
get
you guys.
Spider-Man.
Tom Holland is still hurting. I'm hurting.
He'll come back.
I feel bad for Tom.
It is nothing but bad news for everybody involved for Sony and Disney to not make a deal. They will make a deal.
Oh, we'll
Trust
see.
me. They will figure it out. It might take time. but they will figure it out.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like you like say Wonder Woman 2 like doesn't do that well. We're not gonna get a reboot of Wonder Woman in 7-8 years within the decade, like because Spider-Man 3 came out in 2004. No, 2005.
Yeah, I think so.
And then we got Amazing Spider-Man in 2011.
2010, 2011, yeah.
So that's, white male character. Everyone knows Spider-Man. It's just going to keep spinning forever.
I feel like Spider-Man, though, is kind of... Spider-Man is sort of like Batman in that he's such a cultural touchstone that even if his movies do bad, we're still going to want him. But like a more fair example would be like what happened if Iron Man would have bombed. We might not have gotten another Iron Man ever. But
I feel like Wonder Woman's way more famous than Iron Man as a character.
Well, yes.
In our general day-to-day culture.
But it's also, there's a discussion to be had about the fact that Wonder Woman as a character has existed for like close to 80 years, and that was her first film.
There was the TV show.
Yeah, she had a TV show, but...
that was just a question. I didn't know. I thought there was...
Yeah,
I knew there was an
show.
actress who played her before.
Linda Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's still very beautiful.
She is gorgeous.
But what did you guys like about Wonder Woman? Because the movie obviously did well, but it also was a likable movie.
I mean, we've had plenty of discussions about this because like...
It was a very effective origin story, a very effective fish out of water story. And I thought that Gal Gadot's performance was really solid. I thought that she came across as a very like charming, likable character.
Yeah.
And she felt like a superhero to me in the movie.
Yeah, and it was a well-paced film that told her origin really well.
The third act was a little iffy.
Yeah, it had some problems. The only thing that I really like, if I was to remake that film, the only thing that I would change is I would kind of take out the Chris Pine romance thing. Just because, like, to me, I feel like it would have been a stronger film if she just like stood on her own without Trevor really being a factor.
But he is a good character.
He is a good character, and I like their chemistry.
I like Chris Pine's character just because...
It's Chris Pine.
Well, that. And also because she's on an island with women. Chris brings that human element where she could have easily just been really robotic. I'm here. But it gave her a reason to serve and want to be Wonder Woman at the end.
And it also did give us... the kind of, because you had her fish out of water, but then you also had a little bit of his fish out of water, which again, I wouldn't eliminate his character. His character would still be there. And like, I might have the underlying like beginnings of romance, but the part where they spend the night together, I was like, we didn't need that.
Yeah, I don't think we needed that same, but I do like their character dynamic and how they kind of balance each other out. And like, if this was just a Steve Trevor movie, it would have been fine. It would have been like Top Gun or whatever. But having...
Did you just whatever Top Gun?
I'd watch that.
No, he's obviously a strong character and he's great and all and he's a hero. But when he's alongside Wonder Woman, like, and he's not intimidated by her powers or her effect, like it was just really great to see that on screen.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And also with Wonder Woman, I mean... I feel like most females, there's one scene in particular, the No Man's Land, that is iconic. Every once in a while you come across a Hollywood movie and you remember one scene. And that scene was so symbolic. Her being told, the way that it was edited, her being told up until this point, like, you can't cross it, it's No Man's Land, blah, 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 you can't do this, you can't do that. She's fed up. She like throws her coats all dramatic and everything and like her shiny little boots. She's going up this ladder and she's just like kicking ass. And then the soundtrack, oh my gosh, it was just so emotional. I got teary-eyed because I was like, I think every woman has felt that where you're constantly being told what to do and no. When there are times where you're just like, fuck it, we'll just see what happens.
And I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
I agree that scene is probably the best scene in the movie for sure.
I will say that if history remembers nothing else about that film, that scene will be.
But I didn't think about it from that perspective. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
I definitely had that on my gym playlist for a while.
Oh, the soundtrack.
Oh, it was just that soundtrack. It was just so good. But I mean, Spider-Man, we've seen a lot of movies. there's like a whole bunch of them, but that cartoon version, Spider-Man Into the Uverse, like
Spider-Verse, yeah.
Oh, Spider-Verse, like
Into the Universe.
I think he's Puerto Rican or Dominican.
Miles Morales is half black, half
Puerto Rican?
Puerto Rican.
Yeah, like at least they're starting to
Yeah. And that,
diversify Spider-Man.
and Miles
Yeah.
Morales as a character has only existed since I want to say 2012,
Wow.
I think. And Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy, also now known as, I think, Ghost Spider, she's only existed since 2016.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, the character Gwen Stacy obviously
Yeah,
has
yeah,
existed
yeah.
for a lot longer, but that
The
version,
alternate universe one.
yeah, where she was a spider.
And that movie did very well. Like I heard,
It got Oscar buzz. Didn't it win an Oscar?
It won Best Animated Feature.
That's right, it did.
Which deservedly so. It was fantastic.
Yes, that was a fantastic film.
I felt changed, you guys. I did. I was just like, I walked away from that movie and I was like, wow,
It was
different.
These days, like when I was younger, I used to go see movies multiple times in theaters a lot. These days, I don't really do that unless like I have to for work. But that was a film that I chose to go see a couple of times in theaters.
Oh, I did wait for a Netflix. I'm so sorry.
I saw it a couple of times in theaters, and it's a film that, so like I've been hanging out with this girl Katie, and every time that we're sitting there watching Netflix, we scroll through Netflix, and I see Into the Spider-Verse, and I always hope that she like clicks onto that.
Has she seen it?
I don't know. I never asked.
You need to ask her, and if she hasn't, you need to make her watch it.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird for me to be hanging around with somebody who's not really much of a superhero fan.
I mean, you don't need to be a superhero fan to
job.
appreciate that movie. It's just a
It's
really
true.
good film.
It is just a really, really good movie.
And you walk away life change. Like because all the, there's that storyline with the alternate Peter where he kind of choked and messed up with MJ.
Yeah.
And you just realize it's like, crap, I need to be doing things right in this life, in this universe, or I'm going to end up like him.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good lessons to be learned, and that
And so many
that leap
inspirational
of faith
quotes.
shot was with Miles is amazing.
Yeah, and also another Chris Pine role.
Yeah.
In the story. He was Miles's universe, Peter Parker.
Who dies?
See, you
Yeah.
guys, I'm such a fan.
Nobody said anything about that until the movie came out, and everyone's like, "Is that Chris Pine?" Yeah.
But
Sorry, go ahead.
oh no. I mean, I just feel like not only is Disney having this big push for more diversity, but I also feel like Netflix films and TV shows, they're starting to see it a lot more now. I mean, as I mentioned, To All the Boys I Love, it was refreshing to see a girl who was Asian who could just be herself, and it wasn't about her being Asian.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that show recently because it
It's
was
a movie.
on. Well, movie, whatever. Because it was on. Whenever anything's on Netflix, I just assume it's a show. And I watched a little bit of it, and yeah, the fact that she was Asian, like literally the only moment that I think that it came up was in the beginning. Her family was like, "Man, I hate it when Dad tries to cook Korean food," and that's like the only moment that I saw that it even came up.
And that got me excited because now we're not just talking and showing Asian characters because they're Asian and this is their background and this is like who defines them, but it's becoming more normal, like every day, you know.
In Star Wars, they didn't make a big deal about the characters' races. Like that wasn't.
They
even,
were just there.
Yeah, they were just there. Exactly.
Yeah, which I feel like that's, if you're going to include diversity of any kind, be it race, gender, sexual preference, you only do it a disservice if you draw attention to it.
Well, I mean, if you, unless that's what the story is about. Like,
I mean, obviously.
Like the Farewell, for an example, like the culture clash is like, that's the story.
Yeah, but I mean, like something like Star Wars, if they drew attention to the fact that John Boyega was black or that Rey was a girl, like it kind of undermines what they're trying to do, I feel.
Yeah.
In those situations. Obviously, if it's part of the plot, then draw attention to it all you want. But it's the same as like, if you're going to have a gay main character, don't make it a big deal that he's gay.
Unless that's what the story's about.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an asterisk as I'm saying these things.
Yeah.
Like, just be like, oh, he's gay. Cool. Moving on.
And-
Really, really quickly,
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be remiss not to talk about Ghostbusters 2016.
Oh, yeah. That's
With because I feel like that was an inflection point with the whole like diversity in films.
That-
Because that movie, do you all remember that trailer coming out?
Yeah. The first trailer
Yeah.
for it. And it was one of the most disliked things on YouTube.
I think at the time
ever.
it was the most disliked thing on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't understand what the thought process was behind that. Why they thought it was okay, why they needed a reboot with females, because the movie itself wasn't great. No one was asking for it,
and that's where my conflict with that film comes in. I don't like that film because I don't think that it needed to exist.
And it just wasn't very good.
And it just wasn't good. But every time that I voice my opinion about it because I'm a white man, people just assume I hate it because it's an all-female cast.
I don't think anybody was really craving it. And that's where they totally missed a target on that, because there wasn't like a campaign of people were like, hey, we need a Ghostbuster reboot with females. Like, no one was saying that.
No, like people were pushing for more Ghostbusters, but they wanted Ghostbusters 3. They didn't want a reboot.
Well, there's a lot of talk of like rebooting certain franchises that have had traditionally a male lead with a female. Like they want a female 007 and they want a female Indiana Jones.
Which we're getting a female 007.
Then they did, female Ghostbusters. And, I think that the diversity push is a very good thing on the whole, but I'm also a person who wants new stories. So my thing is, why are we rebooting this with the gender bend instead of just have a new female adventurer archaeologist character type movie that isn't Indiana Jones with a woman? I feel like that's where there's a lot of accusations of pandering. I don't think the accusations of pandering are often legitimate.
No.
Very much at all. I think with Ghostbusters there's a case to be made for it.
Yeah. And also, just as I said, that was just a bad movie.
Yeah.
It was just poorly executed. The CGI was terrible. The acting was moderately okay.
They tried to
jokes weren't
improv
funny.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But like, if you watch the original Ghostbusters, it's really snappily, like well written, really good pacing, all this stuff. But the director, Kevin Feige, who's most famous for creating
Paul Feig. Kevin Feige's the head of Marvel Studios.
I get them confused with the Feige and the Feig.
Yeah.
Who's most famous for like The Office and Parks and Rec and stuff, which is just a different
Bridesmaids
style,
was his
of
big,
comedy.
film. And I
Think
think
if you watch behind the scenes of Ghostbusters 2016, there's just a lot of scenes of them just randomly improving things,
shit.
and then they had to edit it together into a cohesive movie. When if you watch the original Ghostbusters, really witty, really snappy, really quick.
And there was a lot of improv on the original Ghostbusters. Like, don't get it wrong, because you get a group of comedy legends together, but it helped that those comedy legends who were improving were also the writers of the film, because Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, like, they wrote that movie, so they could improv but then bring it back around to the point. But
the thing about that was interesting was that I feel like now if you say I didn't like Ghostbusters 2016, people know, okay, the movie just wasn't very good. But
At the time,
yeah. when you watch if you saw the trailer and you're like, it doesn't look very good, that's when sometimes online you could get jumped on.
Yeah. Which, by the way, it is worth pointing out that when we say Ghostbusters 2016, we are actually talking about its new official title as of its DVD release was Ghostbusters Who You Gonna Call?
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just going to continue to call it Ghostbusters 2016.
I know. Because they wanted to be like, oh, but it's in the same sort of universe. It's not a reboot, guys.
It was a reboot.
It was a reboot.
Even though the trailer made it seem like it was like a soft reboot or a sequel.
You can't go back and say that it's in the same universe and have Dan Aykroyd be cameoing in it.
And have Bill Murray cameo in it.
As different characters.
And Sigourney Weaver cameo in it.
As different characters.
Yeah.
There's the sticking point. If they were the same characters, then you can make that argument. But they're different people. Like Dan Aykroyd was like a taxi driver or something.
I mean, despite the movie not doing so great and it just not being overall that good at all, I still think that they have the right to not be good.
This is
Yeah,
true.
they have the right not to be good, but I think the mistake that the producers or the marketing team made was that they tried to make it so much about that they're women now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like they really, really drove that point home.
They pushed it pretty hard.
And a lot of the marketing came in like in response to how everyone hated the trailer.
Yeah.
And there's even a scene in the movie where Melissa McCarthy's character is like making fun of internet trolls, like it's seemingly almost in direct response to the original reaction to the movie.
Yeah. That movie was, as you said, it's an inflection point.
Because like you said before, like you said earlier, you don't, unless that's what the plot is about, don't really draw that much attention to it. And they really drew so much attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm not super on board. So they're doing Ghostbusters 3. You know, they're actually coming back to do it. And they're making a point of the team of the main team of Ghostbusters is going to be in it. The old people are, at least the ones that are still alive, are going to be in it. But they're like, oh, we're bringing back a new cast as well, but we're not doing like all girls or all men. It's just going to be like
a mix.
We mixed up people. We cast who we think is good. And I believe they said that it's looking like it's going to be 2 girls and 2 guys. And they're just like, yeah, we're just going to make a Ghostbusters movie. We aren't going to try to make a political statement this time. Which, again, I'm not 100% on board with that movie.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how I feel about
I feel like Ghostbusters, after Ghostbusters 2016,
I feel like Ghostbusters 3 like missed the window.
Yeah, they kind of like if Ghostbusters 2016 didn't come out and then they were like, hey, we're doing Ghostbusters 3, I'd be like, all right, cool. Like, they've done that before where sequels to movies like 20, 30 years later have worked. Mm-hmm. Like, it can happen, but 2016 kind of poo-pooed on that, because now Ghostbusters 3 is going to have like this asterisk next to it, almost this sort of taint. That's a bad word, but you know
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean. It's going to kind of, everyone's going to be like, Ghostbusters 3, you mean the reboot or the actual third
or the
film?
sequel, or what's happening here?
It's going to be associated with 2016. So
do we want to talk about Scarlett Johansson?
Oh, Ghost in a Shell? Or just in general?
I was wondering.
Her latest comment.
I was wondering if she was going to come up. Because here's the thing. So, okay. For those of you who are listening who might not know what's going on. So Scarlett Johansson has gotten in some hot water over the last few years for getting cast and playing characters who are not white women. Like,
I think Ghost in the Shell is the biggest example.
But then the one that she got a ton of flack for that she actually backed out of, she was going to play a transgendered man.
But it was her comment that got everyone fired up.
She made a comment that was basically something along the lines of, I'm an actor, let me act. Which, I have 2 thoughts on this. One, I kind of get where she's coming from. Mm-hmm. The job of an actor is to be somebody that you're not. I get that. But at the same time, why not let people who don't get to work that often have the opportunity to work? You know, like, why couldn't we have cast an Asian actor as the major in Ghost in the Shell?
Well,
or...
Yeah, I kind of see where she's coming from. To me, I don't necessarily blame her for accepting the role in Ghost in a Shell because, you know, you're a working actor, you need to get jobs. But also,
that would be one I'd put on the casting director.
Yeah, like whoever, like we were talking, like whoever's in charge, like the writing, the writers, the directors, executives, or whatever. I feel like the responsibility is more on them to do it, not the actors themselves.
But couldn't she turn down the role and raise awareness on it? Because Scarlett Johansson's been around since she was like 13, 12. You know, she's a child actor.
She was around for a long time.
She is still a hot thing. Like, her role in Black Widow, like, she's not going anywhere. She's definitely not a starving artist.
Yeah.
There are definitely roles that will keep coming through her door. This was just one of them that she could have just said, you know what? I think I'm okay. You know, like there are plenty of actors who turn down roles, and I don't know why she accepted it.
Again, I kind of get both sides to this.
I get it from
I agree with you.
A thespian side, like, oh, you know, her comment saying, you know, if I want to play a tree, I should be able to play a tree. If I want to do this, and it's like, yeah, I get it from the artistic side, but at the same time, it's like there are plenty of talented people who do fit that demographic that didn't get the opportunity. Yeah.
As I said, I agree with you on the whole more than anything, but I do definitely get her point of what she's trying to make.
It's just one of those to me. I'm like, ScarJo, sit down.
I'm sorry. I'm really distracted right now by the sounds of what sounds like a wailing banshee upstairs. We are currently at Rizno's once again, and there's some very odd noises coming from upstairs, which weirded me out a little bit. Anyways,
It's very rare to hear things from up there,
yeah,
honestly.
never in any of my times coming here have I ever heard anything. Of course, I'm usually here after hours, so there's not usually like people.
I know, today's Saturday.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Well, I mean, we're here, so maybe they think it's weird that they're hearing somebody podcast. Or maybe they listen to the podcast.
Maybe they do.
And they're excited.
And they're like hyped.
Get to listen to a live recording. It's so fucking cool.
But anyways, so we're going to kind of start wrapping things up. But really what, I guess at the crux of all this that I want to know, Diane, is you say that, like, obviously it's a good thing that we're heading in this direction. Where would you like things to be in, say, 5 years?
I see things already moving now because what I wanted to see was you have to start young, right? Mm-hmm. And I recently did a tour at Nickelodeon, and one of their most popular show right now is called Loud House. If you own a kid, not just kidding. If you have a child, or
some people look at having kids as owning a slave, so it's fine.
Or if you know someone of the age group of like 2 to 11, Loud House is like a very popular TV show.
Meanwhile, me being almost 30, I've literally never heard of it.
Yeah, it's very popular. It's probably Nickelodeon's most popular show after SpongeBob or with SpongeBob. They are now doing a spin-off of a character who is of Hispanic background, and it's called the Casa Grande. They're going to do a spin-off. It's coming out in, I think, October this year. And it's just focused on this one cartoon family. And this is already a successful show. They've been introduced to the family. They've seen the character. So I think that we're going in the right path of we're starting it young now. Mm-hmm. Like, of course, there's Dora the Explorer. And
I was going to say, like, Nickelodeon has actually had quite a good run of having minority leads. Dora the Explorer, her cousin got a spinoff. I can't remember. Diego. Yeah. So Nickelodeon, low key, like really good about that inclusion.
Yeah. So, I mean, starting young, I think the next 5 years, hopefully it'll just become a thing of where we don't have to have a character who we have to describe the whole background. You know, like even now I'm seeing less of the coming out stories for the LGBTQ. It's more of they're playing a significant role. Asians, just like To All the Boys I Love, she's there. She's half Korean, half white. It's not a big deal, but there are like little things that are relatable, like the little Korean yogurt or Korean food.
It's just like get to a point where like the race doesn't really.
Yeah, just like every day now, you know, like we all have friends who are of a minority. It doesn't come up constantly of their background. It should just be a normal thing, and it needs to get to that point. And we have a long way to get there. But I mean, shows are starting to get there now. Like I know Jane the Virgin is done, but they hit 100 episodes, and she's obviously, you know, a Hispanic character. Her and her mom, her grandma have a very close bond, which is a prevalent thing in the Hispanic culture.
Yeah.
Then you have one of the female lead characters in there who ended up being also, I think, bisexual. And so it's just full of diversity, and you're starting to see that more and more so. And no one's making a big deal out of it yet. So once it gets to the point where actors, I think, don't feel like they have to fight for certain roles like that with people who are white. I'm sorry, Emma Stone, but that Aloha movie should...
I forgot about that.
Was a thing.
That's right.
Yikes. Like that shouldn't be a thing. I hope that in 5 years, I love her and all, but that should have been offered to someone that fits the profile more.
Yeah, the white redhead shouldn't be playing a Hawaiian character.
Yeah. Even though she was like a small percentage of Hawaiian, you're like...
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be she was like at most half Hawaiian.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Anyways. So now there's one last question I want to ask you. There is a segment of Twitter that would hate me if I didn't ask this question. There's a segment of Twitter that we hate as well, but I need to ask this question. Why do you want to see white people erased from movies? Discuss.
Not erased from movies. It's just like we don't want white people erased from America. It's
I mean,
just,
some people.
we need
There's
better
some days when I want white
representation.
people erased from America.
I mean, we need better representation. Like Hispanics
Yeah.
is what they're the fastest growing population in America. Why don't we see them more? Like any hospital you go to, there's probably an 80% chance it's a Filipino person. Why don't we see more nurses on TV that are Filipino, you know?
Yeah.
And I was excited because I love Hassan Minaj, and he was doing a little skit and saying that there's a lot of Filipino workers on cruise ships. And he actually got a Filipino actor on that skit. And I was just like, this is amazing. We're moving forward, you guys. Because he could have easily, cast someone who was like Hispanic who may pass as Filipino.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, I think people are more hungry for different perspective and more stories that are relatable to them, that resonates with them. And people are now starting to put money behind it because they realize that Hollywood is a business.
So you don't hate white people.
Definitely not. I mean, they're
Good, because you're in a room where half the people in it are white.
hey, one of my favorite shows is Will and Grace.
Oh God, that's like the whitest show.
Hey!
Actually, no, Dharma and Greg might be whiter.
Or Friends.
Oh, I love Friends too.
I think that they're all on like equal levels
I don't know.
of like super
I think
white.
Friends might be the whitest show because it's set in New York and there's no fucking black people.
Will
In
and Grace
Friends.
do have 2 gay characters.
Well, I mean, they got the diversity because they got the gay characters. That's for sure.
But New York is probably one of the most diverse cities
That's
in the
true.
fucking planet, and
Is
there's
there a
only
single-
white people
Is
in
there
Friends.
a black character in Friends?
I don't think so.
Definitely.
There's no like
Not.
guest, like Rachel doesn't date a black guy at some point.
No, I don't think so.
Fuck. What the hell,
Friends
white
is
people?
the whitest kids you know.
If anybody was to date someone of color, it probably would have been Phoebe.
Yeah, she probably.
I mean, I think I've
I
seen
mean,
most
Joey's
of the show.
Italian, you guys. He's Italian American. I don't know if that,
if that
helps a
counts.
little
There are
bit.
some. I know that there are some Italians and some Greeks who claim to not be white. They're like, I'm not white. I'm Italian. I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're white, bro."
Mediterranean.
Yeah, there's the Mediterranean, which
Well, it depends. It's kind of a thing.
it's kind of a thing.
Depending
There are
on
different.
whereabouts.
There are different sub.
But
groups.
here's what I would like to see. We touched on this a little bit. I would like to
Okay.
see more diverse people in charge of making these films. We mentioned Black Panther quite a bit.
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler's the director. Just not just the actors, but like top to bottom. I want to see more
Producers,
of that.
directors, casting, writers,
Costume
executives,
designing.
costume designers.
I think that's where you're going to avoid the arguments for pandering, because that segment of film Twitter you just posed that question for, they're the
More
ones who
in
are
mocking
who are
of them.
But that segment, I don't know how big it is. I hate that segment.
It's a very small.
But they're the ones who always throw out pandering accusations, like, oh, they're just, white business suits throw these people out there to make extra money because it sells or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think if you have more people at the top, more decision makers of diverse backgrounds, whatever that is, I think that's where we're going to see the positive changes that we want to see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that pretty well wraps things up. Diane, do you have anything to add before we?
No, hopefully we don't have to wait 5 years to see all these changes. Hopefully, with
Well, we'll have you on an episode in 5 years, and we'll see.
and I'm gonna be like, we've gone backwards, you guys.
It's all wrong.
It's got more starch.
No, we'll be sure to have you on an episode before 5 years. So, where can people find you on the internet, Diane?
I mean, I'm not that active anymore. I've kind of stepped away from this business.
We've got to stop having guests who don't have like an
I
active
mean,
Twitter presence.
people can still. I'm still at Diane Thao on Twitter. It's just more so I'm in marketing now. So
What do you market? Anything to plug?
Well, I think it's important to have like diversity on a marketing team, because there are times where we're working with like, say, India, and if I'm the only Asian voice in the room, it does make a difference.
That's a good point. There's certainly something to be said about just diversity in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand there's a different culture. There's different ways to approach words, marketing words, and marketing strategy. And India in particular is still very much guerrilla style on the floor, doing everything. Whereas here, everything's kind of digital. You can reach people digitally. But yeah, I feel like everywhere in life, people need more color.
And you can get that color by following Diane on Twitter. I will have a link to that down below. And Diane, I have a question for you. Chewy.
Oh, my cute little dog.
Do you still do anything with Chewy's Instagram?
I do. So
I will have a link to Chewy's Instagram.
So even if you don't like tiny dogs, or if you don't like dogs, I've met people who like don't like animals at all. People who don't like life, who loves Chewy.
Chewy. Okay, so I don't like tiny dogs. I don't like tiny dogs normally because like they're loud. They yip a lot. Chewy doesn't yip.
Well, the thing is, she's not a dog, and I named her.
She's basically a cat.
No, she's like, I don't know. She's cool. She's like where she got her name from, Chewbacca. Like she's the best.
She's
companion.
even quieter than Chewbacca.
She's like the best companion you can have. She's awesome. Yes, I'm comparing myself to Han Solo, so you guys can accept it. But yeah, you can follow her on Chewy in the Bay on Instagram, and it's just, she's a 3.5-pound Yorkie Pomeranian who's super cool, who like will run a mile with you. She's always just happy.
So if you are bored with getting into arguments with white supremacists on Twitter about Black Panther or anything like that, go ahead and cleanse your palate by looking at a tiny little dog.
I believe they call that eye bleach.
Yes, eye bleach. Go find yourself something really adorable and follow Diane.
And she's worth it. She's so cute.
She is adorable.
I'm going to check that out immediately after we're done. I'm going to endorse Chewy's Instagram 100%. If you want to follow me and Owen, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I am at Bender Waffles, and Owen here is at _P. Yeah, that's right. It's been a while. You almost messed up.
I almost tripped over it. It's been a while since I had to say your thing. So, and you can also follow Star Wipe Lounge at Star Wipe Lounge on Twitter. And be sure to answer our question of the week, which is just simply, what do you think about the casting of non-white, non-male characters in film? Please try to keep it
civil,
sociable.
If not, go to Instagram and look up Chewy.
Yeah. Then calm down. Then come back to the discussion. Use the hashtag StarWhipLounge so it's a little bit easier for us to find your answers. You can follow us on all the major social platforms and all of the major sound platforms. We're available on Spotify, Apple iTunes, or sorry, not iTunes, Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts,
Google Play, and Stitcher, and SoundCloud if you're OG like that. Anyways, guys and gals, we'll be sure to check you next week. Diane, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of pressure in the beginning, and then I was like, you know what? They got no one else.
It's a lot of pressure, but it's up to you. It's up to you to educate these rural white boys.
I'll just go home and cry to my dog.
Anyways, guys, take it easy.